This is Miss Lizzie, and I want to welcome you to the Queen Lizzie podcast. Together, we will go through the history of Rosewood, Florida, and watch as the once prosperous town rises out of the bloodshed, fire, and ash to reveal the people, the memory, and the legacy of Rosewood. Watch every Thursday on Facebook and YouTube, or listen to our story on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Hello, everybody. I am Lizzie Robinson Jenkins, representing not only the Rosewood Foundation, but the personal testimonies and history of cherished friends and family. We are now watching the Queen Lizzie podcast. Today, we are talking with Greg Bradley and James Miller. Welcome, Greg Bradley and James Miller. And
Thank you for having us.
You are very, very welcome.
Yes.
And you may introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Greg Bradley. By day, I own an insurance agency. And by the rest of my time, outside of being a husband and a father, I'm the founder of Mirror Image Leadership Academy.
What is Mirror Image Leadership Academy?
It is a 3-year leadership development experience for incoming 7th graders. So we take kids that are in between 6th and 7th grade, and we keep them their 7th, 8th, and 9th grade year to focus on discovering who God created them to be. So we focus on self-image, purpose, faith, character, work ethic, character and work ethic.
Wonderful. All boys?
All boys, predominantly focused on African American males.
Wonderful, outstanding. And your boys had the opportunity to come out and meet me a couple of weeks ago, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We want James Miller, our next guest, to introduce himself.
Hello everyone, I'm James Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Mirror Image Leadership Academy. I've been with Mirror Image now a little over a year, and I am from a small city outside of Montgomery, Alabama called Wetumpka, Alabama, and have the privilege of living here in Gainesville. My wife is in graduate school here, and I'm a chaplain, I'm a pastor, but by day, I'm the full-time executive director for Mirror Image Leadership Academy.
Wonderful, Reverend. I didn't know you were a pastor. That's awesome.
I call him Preacher Man.
Oh, Preacher Man. Wonderful, wonderful. And I want you all to know how much I appreciate you taking the time sending the 8th graders.
Yes, ma'am. It was the 8th grade scholars.
8th grade scholars out to the farm where the Rosewood House is going to be relocated. They were very well trained, very professional, asked good questions, and very cooperative. I love it. I appreciate it. And this is what we need to do more of. And as you know, we have a book signing coming up. My book, Lizzie's Rosewood Race, which is June 24, 4 p.m. at the Matheson Center. And I really want those guys, the young men, to be there. And I'm looking for sponsors. Did you all hear out there? We are looking for sponsors to sponsor these young men. And I've also invited other groups to be present and purchase a book for each young person. And I plan to take this further because I am a retired teacher. I want these kids to read this book, about 64 pages. It's all about my growing up life. And I want them to start to think about writing their life story. And I'm going to give them a year to do it. But first of all, I want to thank Campus Credit Union USA and Jerry Benton for sponsoring us, the podcast. And I also want to thank Melvin Law and Greg Bradley and Allstate Insurance. Thank you all very much for sponsoring us. And I want to turn your attention to the website where you can donate, rosewoodflorida.com. Yes, we are seeking funds so that we can build and move the Rosewood House, which was owned by John Wright, from Rosewood to Archer. And that house is very important. We're going to turn it into a museum. And the reason it is so important, because it sheltered the Rosewood survivors in 1923. And for 2 days, from January 1 until January 4th, early morning, when they left Rosewood via train driven by conductors John and William Bryce from Bryceville, Nassau County. Had it not been for those gentlemen, the train conductors, the store merchant, and the sheriff, Levy County Sheriff Bob Walker, no one would have survived, because the train was the one-way ticket out of Cedar Key to Archer, which was the first stop, where my aunt, the Rosewood school teacher, lived and is from, married a young man in Rosewood and moved there. So these gentlemen worked hard to make sure they survived. And the reason I said they would not have survived, because Cedar Key is a peninsula west of Rosewood, and it's surrounded by the Gulf of Mexico. So that's why it's one way in and one way out. And my mother was the teacher. My mother was the sister to the Rosewood school teacher. And the reason my mom thought this story to be very important, and it is important to me too. However, when I tell what really happened to her, I kind of lose my concentration, because in the end, or during the course of the attack by the KKK, she was gang raped. And she told my mother her story. And my mom said, you cannot ever forget history. You can't forget the story. You must research, authenticate, document, and tell this story for the world to know. This is our history, and we don't want it to repeat. And that's why I am so willing to tell it to all of the children and everybody I know, especially the younger generation, because they are going to be the group that take our history forward. And I depend very much on people like you all to help, and other people. So my mom said, if you are going to tell that story, that Rosewood story, Mama needs to write you a song. My mother, 8th grade scholar, 4 months out of the year to school, but she was a genius, equivalent to a PhD. And they too listened to oral history, and they told their oral stories to us. So when she gave me that assignment, I wasn't a happy camper. In fact, I was angry, because just think, that's a lot of work. Research, and I have been doing this for 30 years. I'm no longer angry, because people like you all make me proud, because you support what I am doing. And I know I can depend on you to help me get that message out. So she said, you need a song. I can't sing, but it goes like this. 13 verses. Am I going to sing 13 verses? Of course not. But I'll give you just a little bit of her story. Rosewood, Florida borders Highway 24. A destroyed town, no blacks live there anymore. Where emptiness resides in the silent, sacred breeze. Life there no more, only nature's moss-hung trees. Rosewood, Florida was a growing community, linked with chains of love and family unity. Families were linked with wholesome friendship, and each link represented a special kinship, until a little old sleazy woman with a cheating heart triggered the Rosewood massacre, and the colored had to depart. They ran for their lives in the middle of the night. They'd heard a mob was coming to start a hideous fight, and the mob was the KKK, and the little old sleazy woman was Fannie Taylor, who lied and said she was assaulted by a black man who turned out to be my uncle. But the most important, well, one of the most important verses says, the Cedar Key train conductors were told to pick up in Rosewood. Standing by the tracks with the lantern, its young school teacher stood, waiting in desperation to carry out the sheriff's plans, rounding up the hidden survivors to board the midnight train. And the song goes on and on and on. And I know it, but when I sing it, I always want to be sure don't forget it. And I'm going to stop here to see if you all have any questions about Rosewood. Ask anything.
That was beautiful. I don't know what you're talking about, not being able to sing. That was beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
So I guess I have a couple of questions. So,
Okay.
What is it that you find has been the biggest obstacle to keeping this? I mean, 30 years is a long time to press into one thing. Mm-hmm. And so what have you seen? What has been your biggest obstacle to overcome?
The pain. It is so painful. Each time I tell this story, I go home, get in bed, fetal position, decompress. It's very painful. So, but God is there, and every time I go out and tell my story, I always take God with me. I remember one day sitting there at a table in the courthouse in Brunson. A group of white men encircled my tables with camouflage. They had on camouflage pants. I know they were white because I could see their hands and I smelled the smoke. When they came in, my heart dropped. I just knew it would not be any more Lizzie. Okay, but I prayed for God to take care of me. He did. Managed to make it home to tell my mom about the story and said, Mom, I will not. I can't do this any longer. And I told her what happened, and she said to me, baby, just sit down, relax for a few days, and then go back and finish my story. You know what I wanted to say to her? You finish your story. But you didn't talk to adults that way back then. No, either. If they are on the right track, the parents are in control. But I thank her, because the most important thing she said, tell the truth, baby. Don't attack anyone. Just tell the truth. And the truth will set you free. And that's why I have enjoyed doing what I am doing. And when people like you all enjoy what I am doing, reaching out to me for the children's sake, I can't say no, because I know somebody is listening. There was a song there, I'll be listening wherever in my grave. But anyway, they are listening. And I have to tell the story, because they are the next generation. They will, and if I'm repeating myself, I mean it, they will take the story forward. It's not about me or you. History is who we are. Had it not been for the men who stepped forward and said, I'm going to help Mrs. Jenkins, okay, then I wouldn't be telling this story. And today my board is very diverse, and I'm still telling the stories. Okay, it's about time for our first half. We are going to head to a quick break, and we'll be right back after a quick...
Albert, Alberta, I understand you were witnesses to a crash. Can you tell us about the accident? When you're in a crash, it's important to get witness statements immediately after the accident. Whether you're in a car, truck, motorcycle, scooter, or even a golf cart accident, at Meldon Law, we won't back down.
My name is Lizzie Robinson Jenkins. I am the president and founder of the Real Rosewood Foundation, established 2003 in Archer, Florida. Years ago, in a little town called Rosewood, Florida, there was a massacre. Several people were killed, all because of guns, violence, disrespect. We cannot allow gun violence to take out our young kids. We're coming together. We're going to work together. And we are going to put guns on the run. GNV.
I am Black History.
I am Rosewood Black History.
I am Florida and America's Black History.
And you are too.
January 1st, 1923, the KKK insurrectionists attacked Rosewood, killing 5, burning it down.
Because a white woman lied and cried, a black man assaulted me. Rosewood redevelopment is on its way.
Want to help? Visit rosewoodflorida.com.
Welcome back to Queen Lizzie Podcast, recorded right here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Coach Spurrier's own podcast room. We are here with Greg Bradley and James Miller. Welcome back. And as we were just before we broke, you can edit this. Just before break, I was talking with James Miller, complaining, confessing, telling him that I don't know what I am doing and I'm having a hard time concentrating. And of course, he said something to me during break that I want him to say to the people. This is called break time. Break time.
I was just explaining to you that you're a natural. You're a natural on camera, being able to tell the story, and you're very polished, very articulate. And so I want you to run with that because we need to hear this living and past history.
Well, thank you very much. And I really, as I said, I enjoy telling it because it's the truth. And that's why my following is diverse, because people are involved because they want to hear the truth and they can feel it. Someone told me, oh, I can feel the energy. I feel your energy.
Oh, yes.
And I started in 1999, and I have done many class reports. In fact, 29 at the University of Florida. So one day I was talking to a professor's class. His name was Dr. Jonathan Earl. And the name of my foundation was I Too Lived Rosewood, because I had lived it through my mother's story. So at the end of the class, he said to me, Mrs. Jenkins, may I make a recommendation? I said, sure. He said, why don't you name your foundation the Real Rosewood Foundation? Because I was so involved and I could just feel the energy in your history. So I went home and told my mom about the change, and she said, of course. So that's why we call it the Real Rosewood Foundation.
Well, thank you for doing this. And we love hearing the story. And we're always our worst critic. And so you don't hear yourself the way that others hear you.
Yes.
But your voice is not for yourself, it's for other people. And that's why it's so significant and so needed and necessary now.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Do you agree with him?
I agree with the preacher man.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That means a lot to me, and it only inspires me to continue. Okay, it's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
At age 84, I drive
No way.
30 miles round trip once a week to do this podcast for the world,
Wow.
for the children. And speaking of the world, I have an exhibit out there that's called The Elegy to Rosewood. It has gone international. If anybody is within my listening voice, please pull up An Elegy for Rosewood, and you will, and follow us, and you will see that I have done a lot and told a lot of, shared a lot of information. Or my Facebook page, one of them, Lizzie Robinson Jenkins, one of them, another one, the Real Rosewood Foundation, and my website is rosewoodflorida.com. And speaking of An Elegy to Rosewood, one day I was sitting in my living room and the phone rang, and it was a friend from New York, and she said to me, "Lizzie, what are you doing in my living room?" I said, "And what do you mean?" She said, "You're on this on the television talking about An Elegy to Rosewood." I said, "Way up in New York?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Oh, it has gone national." She said, "No, baby, international, because my friend in Japan texted me to tell me that she saw you on TV. It has gone." So I appreciate all of the positive feedback that I am getting. So now I'm going to talk about a book signing that I have invited you all to bring your young men. And I'm inviting other groups out there, okay, to bring their children in. And the purpose of a book signing, I want adults to attend with their children, and we will purchase a book for each child. Now, they're not just going to get this book to say, "Oh, this is my book." They're going to have to work after they get the book. I would like for each child to write his life story, because the book is about my life, starting at age 5 when I first heard the story. And it will give them an idea to write their life story. And I would like for each child to become an author. And as we speak, I'm thinking about starting a Rosewood book publishing company to publish their little books. It doesn't have to be a lot. Start with who I am, okay? And the rest is history, okay? And I want to hear now more about your group, if you want to talk about your group.
Certainly.
Okay.
So just to pull this thread about telling stories,
Yes,
because I think that human history is one big story,
yes,
and so part of what we are doing is we're on assignment, and that assignment is, how do we help people see themselves the way God created them to be? Right. That's fundamentally the assignment, and so Mirror Image Leadership Academy is a part of that assignment, where the name Mirror Image Leadership Academy comes from the fact that you are created in the image and likeness of God. And so regardless of what you've been told, regardless of what your experiences are, what you do is not who you are, right? And you have to separate, whatever your vocation is, your behavior, whatever you're doing is not your identity. So
okay,
our focus is to help these young men discover their identity. And so we don't think that we're here to make leaders. We think that we're here to help them discover the leader that God already made them. So that's a different starting point, because most starting points when you talk about these things are underprivileged, at risk. We use descriptors of that nature, and we flat out reject that as a starting point.
Exactly.
Because that's starting from a liability standpoint, and now we got to work our way from that liability. We are starting from an asset standpoint of, you are created in the image and likeness of God. God already took care of making you who and what you should be. Our job over a 3-year period is to try to help them discover and believe that they are exactly who God says that they are. And so that's it's just a different model, because we're not after behavior modification.
Right, okay.
We're after mindset change, because we can get you to believe what God says about you, then eventually, if you're presented with information that says anything other than that, you will reject it.
Development
And discovery.
and discovery.
Yes, ma'am.
And really, they can make it happen. Who am I? And go back. I hear you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And that is different. And you said something about at risk. I don't like that word.
Nope.
Okay? I taught school and I was given at-risk kids. And I would tell the teachers and the principals all the time, no kids are at risk.
Yeah.
You got to reach them. Chapter 1, I taught a class, chapter 1, and majority black guys. And wasn't anything wrong with them. They were, some were larger, and people are afraid. So I remember my last year teaching in Newberry, I had a room full of black guys. They were not slow learners. No one is. So I sat down and I intend to pull the best out of them. And back then, when we were in school, we had to memorize multiplication tables. And I remember making that assignment to those kids. That was one of my math assignments, learn your multiplication tables, and you really don't need a calculator. And not only did they go up to 12 learning their multiplication table, they did 13, 14, and 15. And Mrs. Robinson, I was Robinson then, don't ask me. I don't know 12, that's my cutoff limit. Don't ask me about 13. But that was to show me how capable they were and how interested. They tested out of that program, and they are doing extremely well today. But you have to set expectations for kids.
Yeah.
And when they live up to and above, they got a thing going on, and I enjoy those kids. And I knew I was an excellent teacher. This is not a bragging piece. I was just excellent, okay, because the last 4 years of my teaching, I received from the state of Florida, Chapter 1, the best teacher in the Chapter 1 program. 4 awards, 4 years. But I challenged our kids. And I told you my mom was a genius, PhD equivalence. It's because our ancestors are geniuses.
Right.
Right.
Oh, it didn't take you all long to say that, to confirm that. And why do you think they're geniuses, pastor, preacher man?
I mean, if you just look at the history of all of the inventors that are African Americans, if you look at the rich histories of historians and educators, I'm sitting at the table with you right now, that have impacted a generation that's behind us.
Yes.
And to be able to even have the experience of even taking our young men to the motherland, in which we will as an organization next month, even being able to have them experience the history even over in Ghana, and how the slave trade happened, and how the most resilient people made it across here to these islands of the United States.
Exactly.
I mean, I think we go back even further than that. If you go back, ancient Kemet,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Now you're going way back.
well,
Tell me about
because
it.
it's important, right? Ancient Kemet, which we call modern day Egypt, right? Those are Africans, and we try to say that Egyptians are separate from Africa, but it is not. And so those were people of color, and the pyramids were built thousands of years before even we pick up with the Bible of Moses writing in 1400 BC. Well, 2,000 years before that, you had pyramids, or give it at least 1,000 years.
And I've been there.
Those are people of color. Those are descendants. Right? If we start talking about excellence and doing brain surgery and astrology and mathematics and science, all those things were already in place by the time Greek philosophers showed up to study in Kemet, right? So those things were already there. So when we say we come from genius, I agree, and I agree immediately.
Yes, you certainly did. You did. And did you tell me that is where the universities were in Ghana? Did you tell me this or somebody else?
It
told
was
me?
somebody else.
Okay, said, and the people came over there to study.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Yes, I'm going to have you all back.
Oh, we would love to come back.
To teach me more. And I want everybody to remember to listen to what you have said. So when is your trip to Ghana?
Ghana is July
July.
23rd through July the 30th. We'll be taking a group of scholars
Okay.
over to Ghana,
Okay.
and we're excited about that trip.
Wow.
It's our first international exposure trip
Okay.
in our organization.
So we have a progressive exposure model. This is, I told you, it's 3 years. So year 1 is local, year 2 is domestic, and year 3 is international. So that third year group is on their international trip. We'll be going on their international trip, and then our second year group will be going to Atlanta next week as a part of their domestic exposure.
Okay, and by the time you go back to Ghana, I hope I'm ready to take that flight with you.
Join us. Yes, ma'am.
It's too long.
It is very long.
It is very long, very, very long. Okay. I am continuously humbled, honored, and blessed to meet people daily and invite them to join in peace building, healing, and reconciliation through learning about the history of Rosewood. That will wrap up today's episode. Thanks to Greg Bradley and James Miller. I am Queen Lizzie. Until next time, goodbye.